Father, thank you for this day, and we thank you for another time that we can come together and learn these truths in your word. I praise you for the revelation we've had about the statue of Daniel 2, and I pray that you bless us now as we study and grant us your Holy Spirit for understanding. In Jesus' name,
As soon as Kathy and I were driving away last night, it clicked on me how you solve the intricate details of that fourth kingdom. And it's in Daniel 8. But let's go to Psalm 132. What? It's unreal. We got to finish Esther. Let's read verses 1 through 7, one verse each. Psalm 132. Lord, remember David and all his afflictions. Mark, verse 2.
Oh, how he sware unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob.
surely I will not come into the tabernacle of my house, and my love is my bed.
I will not give sleep to mine eyes, or slumber to mine eyelids.
Or until I find out a place for the Lord and habitation for the mighty God of Jacob.
Well, we heard it at Ephratah, and we found it in the fields of the wood.
We will go into his tabernacles. We will worship at his footstool.
So what's this 1 through 7? What's this about?
To the building of the temple, or the building of the temple.
It's about David wanting to build a place for the ark. It's the story of the ark, from Shiloh, from Egypt, until it ultimately gets put in Jerusalem. So if you write down these references, you'll find a nice chain study we're going to do. That was Psalm 132, verses 1 through 7. But go to Psalm 78. Psalm 78. Verses 67 through 70. And Tyler, do 67. No, is it Tyler's turn? Yeah.
78:67.
Yep.
Moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph and chose not the tribe of Ephraim.
Tanya?
But chose the tribe of Judah but chose the tribe of Judah, the Mount Zion which he loved.
And he built his sanctuary like high palaces, like the earth which he hath established forever.
He chose
No,
David.
that's good. Just those three. Oh yeah, you can do that.
He chose David also his servant and took him from the sheepfolds.
Just to do with Shushan Palace.
No, probably, but I'm not dealing with Shushan the palace. But I'm talking about the Lord choosing Zion and Jerusalem, and here he's making a distinction. He's not choosing the northern kingdom. He's choosing the southern kingdom. He's choosing Judah, but more specifically, he's choosing Mount Zion, to where he's going to build his sanctuary. Go to Zechariah 1. Verses 13 to 17. Paul, verse 13.
Zechariah.
There's not 13 verses in there. Unless I'm in
Zechariah 1.
Zechariah.
Chapter 1.
Yeah.
What verses?
13 through 17.
Oh, it wasn't sure.
And the Lord answered the angel that talked with me with good words and comfortable words. So the angel that commanded with me said unto me,
Commune.
commune with me, said unto me, Cry thou, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great jealousy. How far do you want me to go?
Verse 17.
And I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease, for I was but little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. Therefore thus saith the Lord, I am returned to Jerusalem with mercies. My house shall be built in it, saith the Lord of hosts, and a line shall be stretched forth upon Jerusalem. Cry ye yet, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, My cities through prosperity shall yet be spread abroad, and the Lord shall yet comfort Zion, and shall yet choose Jerusalem.
So when he's choosing Jerusalem, he's choosing Zion, interchangeable terms. He's going to comfort it. And if you back up to verse 12, which leads into verse 13 where Paul started, it says, And then the angel of the Lord answered and said, O Lord of hosts, how long wilt thou not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, against which thou hast had indignation these 70 years? So what's introducing this history where the Lord's going to choose Zion and Jerusalem is the end of the 70 years captivity. And you want to read the second quote on this piece of paper? Familiar one. We were referring to it last night. The second quote. Yep.
Today the Church of God is free to carry forward to completion the divine plan for the salvation of the lost race. For many centuries, God's people suffered the restriction of their liberties. The preaching of the gospel in its purity was prohibited, and the severest of penalties were visited upon those who dared disobey the mandates of men. As a consequence, the Lord's great moral vineyard was almost wholly unoccupied. The people were deprived of the light of God's word. The darkness of error and superstition threatened to blot out a knowledge of true religion. God's church on earth was as verily in captivity during this long period of relentless persecution as were the children of Israel held captive in Babylon during the period of the exile.
So, what?
Pull it forward. Just pull it forward. 'cause-
Over here?
On the side. On
Or
the side.
glare.
There you go. Good.
What's his date for the beginning of the 70 years? And the end? Pardon me, we had it in a sermon yesterday. 607.
5:30.
5:37?
Yeah, 537.
Okay, so at the end of the 70 years here in the captivity of Israel, when they come out, what is the Lord doing? According to what we were just reading in Zechariah.
Choosing.
He's choosing Zion or Jerusalem. But what is Sister White saying here that this history typifies? This history, right? 1200s of years. So the Lord is doing what in 1798?
Choosing again.
Okay, and it also says that he's going to stretch a line upon Jerusalem. So in Revelation 10 and 11, John is told to take a rod and measure Jerusalem. So when is it that the measuring is taking place?
1798, 1844.
Okay, so in this history, he's choosing Zion and Jerusalem, but this history is illustrating what?
Our history.
Our history. So Jerusalem's going to get chosen again and selected again. All the choosings of Jerusalem and Zion in the scriptures are pointing to our day and age for their perfect fulfillment. Go to 1 Kings 11:36. 1 Kings 11:36. And we might read some surrounding verses. Let me look at it before you start reading, Sister Brittany. Let's start in 29 and read through 30. Read 29 through 36, Sister Brittany. The 1 Kings 11.
And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, that the prophet Ahijah and the Shilonite found him in the way. And he had clad himself with a new garment, and they two were alone in the field. And Ahijah caught the new garment that was on him, and rent it in 12 pieces. And he said to Jeroboam, Take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, Behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. But he shall have one tribe for my servant David's sake and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. Because that they have forsaken me and have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in mine eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments as to David his father. Howbeit I will not take the whole kingdom out of his hand, but I will make him prince all the days of his life for David my servant's sake, whom I chose, because he kept my commandments and my statutes. But I will take the kingdom out of his son's hand, and will give it unto thee, even 10 tribes. And unto his son will I give one tribe, that David my servant may have a light always before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen me to put my name there.
So, when he's choosing Jerusalem and Zion, who else is he also choosing? David. Okay, so David, there's a promise David is always going to have a light in Jerusalem. But when he's making this story is also in Chronicles, as most of the stories in Kings are. But when you find him referencing choosing Zion and Jerusalem, you'll see there's just a few stories that are connected with it. And one of the stories is that he's choosing Jerusalem here when? In connection with the prophecy of the dividing of the sticks. Therefore, when it gets to the end, when he's choosing Jerusalem again, it's going to be where the two sticks are coming together, because he's going to illustrate the end from the beginning. And it's not an accident that as the prophecy that's dividing the two sticks between the northern and southern kingdom is mentioned, that it's also being emphasized that Jerusalem is chosen. Go to chapter 14 of 1 Kings, verses 21 and 22, Brother Jim. 14. Give me a second, make sure that just 21.
And Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Lord did choose out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. And his mother's name was Naamah, and Ammonitis.
Why did he choose Jerusalem? To put his name there. Put his name there. This is part of the story too. He chooses Jerusalem, he chooses Zion, he selects David for the purpose of putting his name there. 2 Kings 21:7, Sister Kathy. 2 Kings 21:7. Give me a second to look at it and make sure we got all the Are you recording me? Did I turn the mute off?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. And you're not, it's not just picking up from there?
Yeah, we got both.
All right. Okay, read verses 1 through 7.
Manasseh was 12 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 55 years in Jerusalem, and his mother's name was Hephzibah. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, after the abominations of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. But, for he built up again the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed, and he reared up altars for Baal, and made a grove, as did Ahab, king of Israel, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. And he built altars in the house of the Lord, of which the Lord said, In Jerusalem will I put my name. And he built altars for all the host of heaven in the two courts of the houses of the Lord. And he made his son pass through the fire, and observed times, and used enchantments, and dealt with familiar spirits and wizards. He wrought much wickedness in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. And he set a graven image of the grove that he had made in the house of which the Lord said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem will I have chosen out all the tribes of Israel, will I put my name forever.
So, how many kings built graven images? Probably a lot. But how many kings are actually identified directly as raising up a graven image?
One.
Right here, Manasseh. And what did he do with the graven image? He put it in the sanctuary, which is where the Lord chose that sanctuary to be.
You're marking that in the sense that it says graven image.
Yes.
Not just think about Jeroboam because he put 2 golden calves, but
Yep.
it's because it's specific.
It says image, thou shalt not bow down to image. So, in the terms of the 7 thunders, this is Manasseh, right? The 7th to the last king. This is the Manasseh we're reading about. Then we have Ammon, Josiah, Jehoram, is it Jehoahaz? Jehoahaz. And then Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah, the 7 kings here. So Manasseh here in 1798, what's he marking?
He's marking the beginning of a progressive fall.
All right, bad question. It's the arrival of what?
The first angel's message.
So Manasseh is the arrival of the first angel's message. What's August 11th, 1840?
The empowerment of that.
So Manasseh can be marked here too. This is getting really wet. Manasseh can be marked here too. You have the 7 thunders and the 7 kings here, but you got a fractal of these 4 kings, Manasseh, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah, that can be illustrated in this history, which is a history of 9/11 to the Sunday Law. So you got Manasseh here, and I just want you to see that when it comes to the Lord choosing Jerusalem, this graven image by Manasseh, what is this typifying? Let's put it this way.
9/11.
9/11. Is there at this point, are the people that are going to be tested in this history from 9/11 to the Sunday Law, are they going to be confronted with the sins of their fathers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what are the sins of their fathers that they're going to be tested by? 4.
Yeah.
And who are the kings that typify them?
Yeah.
Manasseh, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin, and Zedekiah. So in the time period when the Lord is choosing Jerusalem in the scriptures, one of the stories is the dividing of the kingdom, and the other story is Manasseh and his graven image, which is typifying the first abomination of Ezekiel 8, and many things, all right, beyond that. But I just want you to see the biblical history that surrounds the choosing of Jerusalem, because it's mentioned several times in the scriptures, but it's specific histories that it's mentioned in, and we don't believe that there's any accident in the Word of God, right? Go ahead.
When you do that, I mean, it's absolutely perfect logic for me to have the 4 in there because it's coming down to individuals at the end of the day. You can bring it right down. But if you're going to mark it as points in time, you can see 9/11 Manasseh, Sunday Law, Zedekiah. But when you bring it in there, what about Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin? I thought about this. How do you mark that? Or are you just emphasizing it that they're in there because of the fractal?
Yeah, there are what is it called? What kind of fractal are they?
It's not.
Non-self-similar.
Same symbol.
A non-self-similar fractal. And so we have 7 kings, which are teaching the 7 thunders, but 4 of those kings are used by the Lord to identify the progressive fall at a different. The 7 kings are a progressive fall, but these 4 kings that are marked, Manasseh, Jehoiakim, Chin, and Zedekiah,
Marking the everlasting gospel.
everlasting gospel, but they're marking a progressive fall too, but it's a different emphasis. Okay, but anyway, I'm not wanting to deal with the 4 generations or anything right now necessarily. I'm just wanting us to see that Manasseh is associated with the Lord choosing Jerusalem. 2 Kings 23:27. Whose turn is it?
Rollins.
2 Kings what?
23:27.
And the Lord said, I will remove Judah also out of my sight, as I have removed Israel, and will cast off this city Jerusalem, which I have chosen, in the house of which I said, my name shall be there.
So it gets set aside, but as we read in Zechariah, it gets chosen again. But when he comes back to choose it again, he's always going to choose Jerusalem all the way through. He's not going to choose a different city or a different tribe. 2 Chronicles 6, 1 through 7, Brother Jason. 2 Chronicles 6, 1 through 7.
Second Chronicles 6, 1 through 7.
Yep.
Then said Solomon, the Lord had said that he would dwell in the thick darkness. But I have built an house of habitation for thee, and a place for thy dwelling forever. And the king turned his face and blessed the whole congregation of Israel. And all the congregation of Israel stood. And he said, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who hath his hands fulfilled that which he spake with his mouth to my father David, saying, Since the day that I brought forth my people out of the land of Egypt, I chose no city among all the tribes of Israel to build a house in, that my name might be there. Neither chose I any man to be a ruler over my people Israel. But I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there, and have chosen David to be over my people Israel. Now it was in the heart of David my father to build a house for the name of the Lord God of Israel.
So, choosing Jerusalem to place his name, and choosing David. Right. Okay. Zechariah 2:12. We have read. No, we haven't read Zechariah 2:12. Zechariah 2:12. Sister Tanya.
It's Tyler's turn.
It's Tyler's turn. He's hard to see over there. It's Brother Tyler. Second.
2:12.
Zechariah 2:12.
And the Lord shall inherit Judah his portion in the Holy Land, and shall choose Jerusalem again.
Okay. It gets chosen again. During the 70 years, the promise is he was going to choose Jerusalem again. He did at the end of the 70 years, but we've already read where Sister White says the 70 years typify the 1260 years, and he's choosing Jerusalem again in the Millerite history. But Sister Tanya, read chapter 3 of Zechariah, verses 1 and 2.
And he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. And the Lord said unto Satan, The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, even the Lord that had chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire?
Sister Madison, read the first quote on our handout from Prophets and Kings 587.
Zechariah's vision of Joshua and the angel applies with peculiar force to the experience of God's people in the closing scenes of the Great Day of Atonement. The remnant church will then be brought into great trial and disgrace. Those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus will feel the ire of the dragon and his hosts. Satan numbers the world as his subjects. He has gained control even of many professing Christians. But here is a little company who are resisting his supremacy. If he could blot them from the earth, his triumph would be complete. As he influenced the heathen nations to destroy Israel, so in the near future he will stir up the wicked powers of earth to destroy the people of God. Men will be required to render obedience to human edicts in violation of the divine law.
So in the first sentence it says, Zechariah's vision of Joshua and the angel applies with peculiar force to the experience of God's people in the closing scenes of the Great Day of Atonement. When's that? That's 9/11, to Michael standing up. And Sister Tanya read verses 1 and 2 of the story of chapter 3 of Zechariah and the angel. And he says, he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. And the Lord said unto Satan, The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, even the Lord that has chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. This is the proof text that the Lord chooses Jerusalem here in the closing scenes of the Day of Atonement. So what are the closing scenes of the Day of Atonement? Not the history, what are they?
9/11 also.
Why? Why is it 9/11 on? What starts at 9/11?
The
The judgment of the living. Okay, so in the judgment of the living is when the perfect fulfillment of the choosing of Zion is taking place. Okay, so go back to Psalms 132 and we'll try to bring this to a close. Psalms 132, we read verses 1 through 7, but now we put context in place to 1 through 7 was about David wanting to bring the sanctuary into Jerusalem and build a temple for it to be at. So, Brother Michael, read verses 8 through to the end.
Arise, O Lord, into thy rest, thou and the ark of thy strength.
When does the Lord arise? 9/11.
Let thy priests be clothed with righteousness, and let thy saints shout for joy.
When do the priests get clothed with righteousness?
During the history of the midnight cry.
9/11 to the midnight cry, beginning the first day of the first month.
For thy servant David's sake, turn not away the face of thine anointed. The Lord hath sworn in truth unto David, he will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body will I set upon thy throne.
How's he going to do that? What's he saying there?
First fruit offering.
No. He's talking about David. He's promised David that David would always have a descendant to sit upon the throne of Jerusalem and Zion. How's he going to do that? Are any of us, if we're thinking we're the 144,000, are any of us literal descendants of David? Maybe, but it's, how's he going to do it? How are you going to understand it? That's really what I'm trying to say.
Spiritually.
Through the seed.
Yeah, through taking the literal to illustrate the spiritual. You're only going to see this if you're using Miller's rules, and the people that are going to be, that are typified by David are spiritual Davids. Go ahead.
If thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony that I shall teach.
When do we enter into covenant?
9/11. Their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore. For the Lord hath chosen Zion, he hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forever, here will I dwell, for I have desired it. I will abundantly bless her provision.
This rest, what is that?
That's Isaiah 28.
Yeah, that's where he's going to dwell. Where he dwells is the rest and the refreshing. It's Isaiah 28, it's Acts 3, it's walking in the old paths where you find rest for your soul. All of this, 9/11.
I forgot. Okay, I will abundantly bless her provision. I will satisfy her poor with bread.
What's the bread he's going to satisfy the poor with?
Hidden manna.
The hidden manna.
I will also clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints shall shout aloud for joy. There will I make the horn of David to bud. I have ordained a lamp for mine anointed.
How's he make the horn of David bud?
The rain.
Right.
The spirit of bread.
And the budding out is what?
The choosing. That's
It-
rods.
Yeah, but it's the beginning is what I'm getting at, okay? Isaiah 27 says, I will cause, keep your finger there, read the last verse.
His enemies will I clothe with shame, but upon himself shall his crown flourish.
Okay, so what is that, what's described there?
Two classes of worshipers.
Two classes of worshipers, and when the two classes of worshipers are marked, what does he say about the one class? They're going to be the crown. What's the crown? It's the ensign that's lifted up. Okay, but we go to Isaiah 27. We all know this, but just to bind it off about the budding. Isaiah 27, verse 6. He shall cause them that come of Jacob to take root. Israel shall blossom and bud and fill the face of the world with fruit. So the blossoming and the budding comes before the fruit bearing. So the budding, if he's causing the horn of David to bud, it's at the beginning of the process. It's at 9/11.
The crown flourishing answers to the filling of the earth with fruit, does it?
The crown is at the Sunday law. Right? Is that what you're saying?
And then the filling the earth with fruit would be that
Yeah.
you're budding and blossoming and filling the earth with fruit is the flourishing of the crown.
Yep. They become the ensign that the world chooses either between Barabbas or Christ, and it's at that point they manifest their fruit and they're lost or saved. Accordingly, let's go to Esther now. Anyone remember where we left off?
4.
No, we're further than 4.
4 or 5, I was going to say.
We finished 5.
We finished 5, and
We did.
1-7, I think.
Ooh.
we're on 7.
No.
So nobody knows.
Are you saying, Brother Jim? We read.
I don't know if we finished 7, we definitely were way into it.
We were way into 7.
Really?
It's a short one.
Well,
So
he
let's
walked
go back to chapter 5. The last verse. Haman's excited, but he's bummed out, and his wife. Haman is the political horn of the United States. Apostate Protestantism is his wife, and the wife tells him, build a gallows, 50 cubits high. What's 50 a symbol of?
Law.
Pentecost, the Jubilee, the law of God, the Sunday law. All right, so he's building the gallows 50 cubits high. Is it instantaneous?
Yeah, it happens that night. Oh, so what do you
Well, I have a
No, it's
question.
progressive.
It's progressive. What does it mean that it's progressive?
Takes a while.
It takes a while. What is it?
It's a setting up of the
It's a setting up of the image of the beast.
But it's done pretty quick, because it's done in one day.
Yeah, it's done that night.
Yeah.
Well, that's the question I have on, says on that night could not sleep the king. So it says that he's asking to read some of the Chronicles. And then the question is it on the same night that Haman is walking in to talk with the king at night, or is it the next morning?
Next morning.
Because the next morning, the next day, that's after he's speaking with the king and he's done, and then right away he's taking and going to Esther banquet. So it cannot be that night, it has to be the next morning.
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, it is the next morning.
That's
That Haman.
They have the
went
first
to talk to the
banquet.
king.
Haman goes home, talks to his wife. She says, build a gallows. He puts his men to work building the gallows, and on that night, Ahasuerus.
So then it's on
Can't
the
sleep.
same night that he's going to the banquet to Esther, not the following day?
No, not the banquet. The same night he goes to Ahasuerus.
It's the
to
same night he had the
Ahasuerus.
first banquet.
Yeah.
The next day he's going to the second banquet. There's 2 banquets
Yep.
of wine by Esther. And he comes to understand about the faithfulness of Mordecai, and then Haman shows up, and
I'm going to retract what I said. I don't have the confidence that we were in the 7.
I don't think we
We
got
went
all
to
the way.
you know, we're going to find out when we look at the recording last time, and then we would chastise you if you're wrong with whips and scorpions. So, remember we have went through chapter 6 though, right? Yeah. So
We are at 7?
So, because we were emphasizing that Haman gives Ahasuerus the idea to typify the triumphal entry. You know, put the royal garments on him, put him on a horse, and lead him through
Do
the city, saying, "This is what's happened
This
to
is
the
the man
man
whom I delight."
that the king wants to bless." Okay, so
This-
that's an illustration of the triumphal entry.
This is after he builds the gallows, right?
Yeah, gallows are already built.
Oh,
'Cause
this
he
is
gets
so
killed.
ironic.
So, are the gallows being built during the time period of the triumphal entry?
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, yeah.
The image of the
They were up
beast
before then.
test is the midnight cry time period. They're the same.
But they
period.
were up before then, because he had them built by the next morning, and then he has to lead the triumphal entry or whatever.
Yeah, but he's already been to the first banquet, and the 2 banquets are marking the midnight cry. This is midnight cry history. The doubling of the banquets is saying this is midnight cry history. So then he comes in verse 10 of chapter 6. Then in in verse 12, he hastens to his house, Haman, and tells his wife. And in verse 13, she gives a prophecy. She says, or his wise men do, and his wife. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, and who are his wise men and Zeresh his wife and he?
Threefold, the dragon, and the false prophet.
Threefold, that's the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. In the history of the United States, because these three influences are going to build an image of the beast in the United States, and thereafter these three entities will build an image of the beast in the world. If Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall. Who's Haman? He's the United States. What's happening to him in the midnight cry? He's beginning to fall. Babylon is fallen, is fallen. This is the message of the Millerite time period, of the midnight cry. Thou shalt not prevail against him, but thou shalt surely fall before him. Other than the Millerite history and the expression of the second angel, which the midnight cry is an empowerment of, what's another illustration of Haman, the United States, falling in this history that we've been looking at recently that has to do with Islam?
Ships of Tarshish.
There's another illustration we've come across here in the recent past that shows the United States falling at this waymark, and
Constantinople.
Islam is associated with it.
About Balaam?
Balaam. Okay, the third confrontation with Balaam and his ass. What does the ass do? It falls down, and who's on it? Balaam. The United States is falling right there when the ass is going to speak. So this is about the demise of the United States. United States. This is the conquering of Daniel 11 verse 41.
You know what I think is interesting is that Haman, he didn't realize he was going to fall, just like the United States doesn't realize it's going to fall, but it is teetering on an economic crisis, and yet they keep lifting it up, propping it up. But you can see, most people, economic people, can see that we're on the verge of an economic crisis, but they don't want to say that.
Okay,
And
so
that's exactly what's going on right now.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, you can see it happen. So in chapter 6, after the prophecy, if this is a Jew that you're turning against, you're going to fall. And in verse 14, while they're yet talking, the messengers come in and says, it's time for the second banquet. And we're saying that we did chapter 7?
No, we're ready to start chapter 7.
Okay, Brother Jim. You can read the first 5 verses of chapter 7.
His wife is smart, or what? She tells him to go build the gallows, and then she tells him,
don't do it.
You're going to go down because
She's going to go down with him.
so she knows what's happening.
Yes, she does.
So the king and Haman came to the banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom.
What's that?
Salome.
That's Salome. This is Elijah and John the Baptist. This is the midnight cry. This is the demonstration of the prophets of Baal in contrast with the true prophet.
Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it pleased the king...
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
What else happened in verse 2?
Daniel.
Petition.
You read verse 2 before you answer, all right? Petition.
Inquiry.
Inquiry. The inquiry is taking place here through these verses. Go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. Let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we have been sold for a bondman or a bondwoman, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. And the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he, and where is he? There's presumed in his heart to do so.
Another inquiry.
And Esther said, the adversary and enemy is the wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw there was evil determined against him by the king.
Kathy, 3 through 10, or 8 through wherever you left off to
Jeff,
10.
I was saying that Daniel gains favor with Melzar just like Esther does. Or in the sense that you have maybe I'm mixing things up.
No. The favor that he supernaturally gains with Melzar is typifying the favor that Esther supernaturally gains with Haggai, or whatever, however you say his name.
Yeah, I mixed it though. I was saying that right here. Yeah, I was mixing things.
Don't mix them.
Yeah.
That's amalgamate.
It's amalgamate.
Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed wherein Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face.
Now, explain that to us, Sister Kathy.
What? It
What's
just
the-
must have enraged the king. When,
Yeah, raise the
when
king, but
he
what's
was
being
begging.
typified there?
Right.
Being typified.
Rape, okay, maybe, but what's being typified there? What's going on with this history?
Spiritual darkness.
Spiritual darkness. Okay, so yeah, he goes into spiritual darkness. This is Zedekiah's
they're
eyes
working out.
being gouged out.
Yeah, they covered Haman's face.
But what is it when he falls upon Esther's bed and the king sees it?
You know,
What is he condemning him for? What is his condemnation illustrated
Fornication.
as here?
It's a combination of.
What's he trying to do?
Beg her.
Who's Esther? Force her. Force Esther to do what? What the king thinks is he's trying to force Esther to commit fornication. Who's Esther? It's God's people. God's people where?
From the midnight cry.
In the United States. God's people in the United States. What are they trying to make God's people do?
Oh, so that would be like
Worship Sunday.
Commit fornication with the papacy. Esther's refusing to do it. So the king what he's seeing is illustrating the image of the beast testing process. Right? Okay, next verse.
And Harbonah, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also, the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified.
What's that?
That's the falling away.
That's the falling. This story is the falling away first that leads to the gallows. What's the gallows?
Sunday.
Sunday law.
It's the decree, the death decree.
No, it's the Sunday law.
Why would it be a death decree?
Because the death decree comes later. It is Sunday law in the United States. Who's Haman?
United States.
Okay, so what happened to Haman here?
He's killed.
Okay, that's the death of the United States. It's fallen. The United States the glorious land has been conquered. Right? In his Daniel 11 verse 41 and all right. So Sister Brown, read verses 1 and 2 of chapter 8.
On that day did the king Ahasuerus give
What day?
On the day Haman died.
What's the day that Haman died?
Sunday law.
Okay.
On the Sunday law. King Ahasuerus, give the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman.
So what was just illustrated there?
A sealing.
Change.
The sealing is at the Sunday law, right? But a change of what?
Leadership.
Change of
For
leadership.
God, well, it was no longer, he put Mordecai in charge of it.
In charge of what?
Haman's house.
Haman's house.
Oh, Haman's house.
So there's a house that's fallen, but a house that is established. What house is established?
House of David.
Judah.
The house of David. The house of David is being established here. From 9/11 to the Sunday law, what's happening with the house of David?
Being built.
It's being built. But at the Sunday law,
It's established.
it's established. What else happens at the same time?
Another
That-
house falls down.
What house?
The house of the United States.
The United States goes down when the church triumphant is established. Now you go back to Psalms 132. And I've mentioned this, so I'm sure everyone's heard this, and you may all understand it perfectly. But it needs to be put in the record here. In Psalm 132, in verse 17, it says, "There will I make the horn of David to bud." Where?
9/11.
In Jerusalem at 9/11.
Yeah.
"I have ordained a lamp for mine anointed." Now, because we're so wrapped around the parable of the 10 virgins, when we read lamp, what do we think?
Midnight cry.
We think, no, we don't think church.
A light.
we do, that's
We
what
think the Bible. All the virgins have a lamp, all right? And that needs to be filled with oil. But what is the lamp also in the scriptures? The church. So when he's ordained a lamp for his anointed, who is his anointed? David. What's the lamp?
It's
It's
It's which church is it?
the church
Oh.
triumphant.
It's the
It's
church
house of
triumphant.
Yeah.
It's the house of David. When is it going to be put in place?
David. The son-
Sunday law. So go to Ezekiel.
So a house and a church are two different.
7 candlesticks or 7 lamps.
No, the house. You're saying there's an establishment of a house, and specifically a church within that house.
Aren't the house our bodies?
I'm just wondering how you're different.
Differing what? We're dealing with the day of the Lord, which is not understood well in this movement or in Adventism, but in Abraham's covenant prophecy, which is historically demonstrated in the deliverance from Egypt, and then a second witness in Jeremiah's cup in chapter 25. Probation closes for God's people at the same time that the country that God's people have been in, probation closes. So the house of Haman is the close of probation for the United States, but at the same time, Jerusalem is being ordained as a lamp, as a church triumphant.
The kingdom that's cut out of the mountain without hands. This is a kingdom replacing a kingdom. The sixth
Yes.
kingdom Bible prophecy is replaced by God's kingdom,
Yep.
which is the house of David.
Right.
The house is the lamp.
The house is the lamp. Is
The house
church,
is his
the
lamp, the
rock.
lamp, yeah.
Okay, that's all right.
Okay, so if you go to Ezekiel 29,
Psalm.
Ezekiel 29, verse 17. "And it came to pass in the 7th and 20th year, in the first month, in the first day of the month, that the word of the Lord came unto me, saying," and then he describes that Nebuchadnezzar is given Egypt. And Nebuchadnezzar is given Egypt on the first day of the first month. Right? But in verse 21 it says, "In that day," what day?
First day of the first month.
"In that day, at 9/11, will I cause the horn of the house of Israel to bud forth, and I will give thee the opening of the mouth in the midst of them, and they shall know that I am the Lord." So at 9/11, this house of Israel budding forth is the beginning of the choosing, rebuilding of Jerusalem at the end of the world. And Jerusalem's ordained to be a lamp, but it isn't a lamp until Haman falls. And Haman's kingdom is given to Mordecai, who has the king's seal, because this is the sealing time period. From this point forward, the sealing begins at the Sunday law, and it goes until Michael stands up.
And Roman, right there, you can see the connection to house. House
Yeah.
with the horn,
House of
the horse,
Israel.
and the house of David in the scriptures.
So they don't run simultaneously. I can't think of
What
any
don't
line.
run simultaneously? What don't run?
The United States House and the House of David, they don't ever run. One goes and the other comes. Is that how it works, or I just can't?
The
think of
house
that
has to be
line.
built first. David wanted to build a house. From 9/11 to the Sunday law, the house is being built. He first is going to raise up some priests, then he's going to raise up some Levites. But after, in every reform line, after the message is empowered, what's the next thing that happens? In the three decrees, the first decree is Cyrus. When is the first decree empowered? In Daniel 10, when Michael comes down out of heaven and prevails to direct Cyrus, okay? Then the message is empowered. And in the scriptures, what does it say that Cyrus would do?
He's going to lay the foundation.
He's going to lay the foundation. The first thing that happens at 9/11 is what?
The foundations.
The foundations. Why the foundations?
Because
That's where you have to start building
You
it.
haven't built on it yet.
When does the temple get finished?
The temple's finished between the second and the third.
Yeah, it's finished before the third decree. The scriptures, and Sister White is clear,
Oh,
the
that's
temple
right.
is
Just
finished
demonstrate.
before the Sunday law. So it's getting built from 9/11 in advance of the Sunday law. It's already done, the temple.
But not chosen. Done, but not chosen.
Well, it's been chosen, but it's not going to be ordained
And
as
not
a lamb
traded.
until
It's
Haman's
progressive.
kingdom falls. You
It's a-
can't separate the land where God's people are dwelling from God's people when it comes to the day of the Lord, because their probation closes simultaneously.
It's like you're building the house and then it's dedicated. You know, at the Sunday law, it's the official.
That's what
cut.
Solomon was doing.
You're cutting the ribbon,
Temple.
and that's it.
So, where did ancient Israel's probation close in the Red Sea deliverance? In terms of the ceiling, because that's what we're looking at. Where's the ceiling marked in that
The
history?
doors.
The doors. Okay, so their probation is closing. How many months later is it that Pharaoh dies in the Red Sea? It's like 72 hours,
Yeah,
right?
several days.
Okay, their probation is closing simultaneously.
And
Pharaoh doesn't die.
usually he gives you a land.
Pharaoh doesn't die in the Red Sea?
Oh, yes, he does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I thought just his armies.
thought it
He
was his
leads
armies.
his armies. He goes down.
What, he's leading them out?
Yeah.
He's leading them?
But they're not getting a land this time. We were given the glorious land at Falls, and now it's just a church, and we're going to be given the heavenly land back again. So we're, for a period of time, only the church, only the people with no land.
But the
Is that how
church,
you see it?
the church is the
Because
kingdom.
we're
though.
always
The
made up.
inheritance-
We're given a land always.
God is their inheritance.
God is there.
He always gives a land though, a real
Yeah, but
land.
well, when he's giving the land, what is that land typifying?
Heavenly Canaan.
So I'm
The
wondering,
earth
there's
made new.
So we used to wait 1,000 years as his land until he gives us
When
back
Pharaoh
our land.
died in the Red Sea, how long was it before they entered the Promised Land?
Oh, 40 years.
40 years.
Shouldn't
But
have
it
been.
could have been shorter, but it couldn't have been. It required. Even if they were faithful, what were they going to have to do?
Why put
Raise up
people
the
in-
tent sanctuary.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to have to take some time and receive the law. They're going to have to build the sanctuary. They weren't going straight into the Promised Land. They were going to have to establish the sanctuary.
The
of the
sanctuary and the government had to be established.
An organization.
And then the land was
And
given.
then-
Yeah.
But then what's the next thing we see after David's house is selected? I mean, it's rapid events, and then Christ comes, and everyone goes to heaven, and then they come back. So it's, that's your,
The land comes.
the land's coming. It's just
You know,
not there yet.
Organization is in there, and you guys have been talking about that. I think that's interesting, that it seems to be coming up more and more. Organization.
Yeah, it's
Of how to
it's part
spread
of
this
this
message.
story. In every covenant line, you see organization.
Yeah.
Moses with Jethro, okay? In the time of the
Party, yeah.
disciples, they're appointing deacons, they're organizing the churches. And from 1844 to 1850, That's part of what took place. If you go to the Adventist historian, is they were organizing themselves because Sister White says was told during that history, organization is essential.
And you can see clearly that there's another organization going on too, a counterfeit organization.
I talked to a brother recently about this counterfeit organization, and his argument was, well, if you go to the Pioneer Writings, you can see all over the place that there were Second Advent associations, that's what they called them, and they were organizing, and so this is a fulfillment of the Second Advent associations. I'm like,
It is a fulfillment.
It's a fulfillment.
Because the counterfeit always precedes the truth.
Yeah, exactly. So
And that's what, in the first organization that's marked in that history is 1845 at that General Conference session, which Heim set up and Miller chaired, and in that session what they did is they rejected that the Lord had been leading in the movement from 1840 to 1844. So this Second Advent Association that's being set up now is doing the identical thing.
And if you look at people's comments, I mean, Facebook's not the best place, but you can see at least what they're expressing. They are direct, several people, at least two that come to my mind, but I'm sure lots more. These two people have done studies on what line upon line really means. They are openly rejecting line upon line. That's exactly what Isaiah 28 says. Tied Isaiah. It's exactly what they say it's going to happen. So.
I have a question that was raised based on organization in Sabbath school yesterday, and we didn't get to it, but it said in Wesley's time, as in all ages, so we can say in our time, men of different gifts performed their appointed work, but they did not harmonize upon every point of doctrine. But they were all moved by the Spirit of God and united to win souls. It says that they didn't have a, they weren't perfectly organized on their doctrine, even though they worked together. So I wonder how you can explain that.
Very easily.
Okay.
When Sister Wright says the second angel's message arrived in the summer of 1844, what does she say about that? That it wasn't the perfect fulfillment of the second angel's message. That is yet future. All the illustrations of organization or of any characteristic of the end time church are imperfect. But the Bible teaches that the watchman at the end of time will see eye to eye. And the unity that comes into the work is repeatedly emphasized. The church that becomes a lamp, the church triumphant, there's perfect unity in them. Unlike the histories that have typified it, because those were imperfect histories.
Okay, that's great.
Right?
That's great.
Yes, we will be the perfect, with God's people at the end of the world, will be the perfect fulfillment of all the illustrations.
Right. Back to Esther. See how far we can get. So in verses 1 and 2, this is the day of the Lord. This is the United States going down and the church triumphant being lifted up. Who read last? Rowan? Okay, Jason, do 3 through 6 of Esther chapter 8.
And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the things seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people, or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred?
So what is she proposing?
Another decree.
Kind of decree.
Okay, so which decree would this be that we've been marking? If that she's proposing. This is the 4th decree. Okay. Tyler, do verse down to verse 10.
Then the king Ahasuerus Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther, the queen, and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews, as it likeneth you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring, for the writing which is written in the king's name and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month Sivan, on the 23 day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants and the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to the writing and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by post on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries.
So what is this 4th decree? What are the characteristics of it?
Camels, mules, dromedaries. How it goes.
That's how it's
That wasn't what I was looking for, but okay, so it goes on those. What is it?
It's in the 3rd month.
It's in the 3rd month.
That's Pentecost. It's at the time of Pentecost.
Okay, that's not what I'm looking for either, but okay.
They can defend themselves.
Where's it going?
To the everywhere.
The whole world. And what is it?
It's in relation to the death decree.
But it's a sealing message, right? This is the Sunday law time period of the whole world. If we're understanding this correctly, we've just had the Sunday law in the United States. Now this is going to every province in the world. This is worldwide. This is the mark of the beast test going to the whole world. It's in that time period because this is the sealing message going to the whole world.
And it's carried on Islam because of the mules.
And you're wanting to know what it means that it's carried on mules, camels, and young dromedaries.
What's a dromedary?
A type of camel. Do you have reason to identify mules as
and
Islam?
Horseback. And horseback too. Horseback.
This is the first one.
Horseback.
Letters by
Mules,
post
camels,
on
and
horseback.
dromedaries.
So you're saying this is a 3-1 combination, or is horsebacks a symbol of these 3 mules,
3-1
camels, and
with Islam.
young dromedaries? Pardon me.
3-1 with Islam.
It's a 3-1 combination, and can horses be a symbol of Islam?
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Can mules?
Wild horse, yes.
Can camels and dromedaries?
Yes.
I don't know why
So
not.
this 4th message is going forth to the entire world during what time period?
A massive insight of Islam worldwide because there's 4.
Worldwide Islam. Now it's moved out of the United States.
It's just a mess.
You have something you want to say?
But it's not
No,
a
I was just
Sunday
saying
law,
that
is
at the
it?
midnight cry we had a number 4 in relation to Islam as well. Number 4 here, so
I have a question. Are we gonna map it all out, or at least where the decrees fall in relation, just on the board so that we can see?
Is that what you want us to do?
I guess
I would
that,
like that.
I
Yeah.
guess
Just to see it all.
the midnight cry will be worldwide as well. So.
Yeah, because the whole world's going to start watching, but at this point they're just watching. But at the Sunday law, they become participants now. They're choosing
Yeah.
between life or death. Well, should we finish this chapter before we go to the board?
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask everybody? We talked about the fact that Esther hid that she was a Jew, right?
Yep.
And then it came to light in a couple of places here that when she refers to herself as my people. So I guess there's no relevance when she comes out of the closet on this, because I didn't see any reaction.
Yeah.
Correct.
She waited till the right time to speak up, so there wasn't like some.
No, but at what point does she come out of hiding?
When does she come out of hiding and the fact that she is a Jew become part of the story?
7-6 maybe?
7:4, she says my people.
Okay.
Okay, so she's opened it up to the king at what point in time?
At the banquet, midnight cries.
Something like that.
Sunday law time part. Midnight cry. This is the climax of the midnight cries of Sunday law, because in that very scene, what's going to happen to Haman?
He's
also
gonna be
is-
He's going to be hung. So this is the climax of the midnight cry time period. What is Esther illustrating about her hiding?
That's when she's lifted up as an ensign.
She's lifted up as an ensign. She is how would you express that in the story of Elijah or John the Baptist? the distinction between the true and the false prophet has been manifested. She is identified as God's representative. She's the church triumphant. She is the ensign at the Sunday law. It's hidden before that, probably by the fact that in that time period people are choosing between the manifestations of the false priest in contrast with the true priest. She comes out of hiding. She's recognized as God's people.
Why does it say the king arose from his wine? So we know when somebody arises, it's a change of dispensation in his wrath. So is this the precursor to the final wrath of the king? You know, during the banquet when Haman did that, he arose.
What is
in
the
his
king's
wrath?
wrath? The king, who is
the Lord.
It
Ahasuerus?
rises terribly to shake.
Shake terribly the earth.
So
Yeah,
what would that be? You threw out some terms. Explain it to
It's
us.
the day of the Lord. Well, the day of the Lord is his wrath and his indignation. It's when
When's
it's
it
him
first?
arising.
When's it first marked?
9/11. No.
No.
Sorry.
Move to Idaho, my brother. The Sunday law.
No, he at 9/11 he does arises terribly to shake the earth.
Yeah.
But that's not the same.
You're talking about the day of the
Yeah,
Lord.
we're using that terminology. Though,
Not the tearing time.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so when's it first manifested? The day of the Lord.
The Sunday.
Sunday law. That's his wrath. But what is it typifying?
Close of probation.
7 last plagues. It's progressive,
And
but
ultimately,
it begins at the Sunday law.
It's
This is
progressive.
him rising in his wrath, marking the beginning of the day of the Lord period of time, which begins at the Sunday law when the United States ceases to be a kingdom and the church triumphant is recognized as being the Jews.
So then if you're going to say that it's progressive, then how do you explain the last few words of verse 10 in chapter 7?
Oh, so you've got a trick question for us. Then was the king's wrath
A
pacified.
restraint of his wrath. I don't understand that. That's what I'm wondering. I understand the progressive wrath. I don't understand why it would stop in the middle of this narrative.
Because
Maybe that's
Sister
the
White
time for the
says,
11th hour workers.
Sister White says,
Not
the
that
same
short.
test that comes upon the people of the United States will come upon all our people in every country on the globe. So they're going to go through a testing process, and his second manifestation of wrath is the 7 last plagues.
And Shalom, though, which marks is the next one after is Zechariah, is retribution. So God is taking retribution right at that point.
it's passive.
But it's
passive.
retribution upon Egypt, upon the United States, upon Pharaoh.
Yeah, it's pacified in the sense that he got what he wanted. He destroyed the United States. He punished the country
Punished
that filled
Haman.
its cup with iniquity, and it's pacified. But we know from Jeremiah 25 that that's not it. It's pacified in that circumstance, in that situation. It's pacified. But there's more. The Esther's not talking about the other situation, but in that circumstance, it's pacified.
Every country on the globe is going to have the same testing process, and until that testing process is complete, he doesn't manifest his wrath upon them.
They still technically have a few more drops to drip in their little cups.
So when was his wrath manifested in the Red Sea deliverance? At the Red Sea. But what was he going to have the children of Israel do?
Kill the Amorites.
All the other nations in the Promised Land were going to be destroyed, but there was going to be a period of time before they got there. Short period of time, but they turned it into 40 years. So there's the day of the Lord has certain characteristics. It's progressive, but its first primary manifestation is the Sunday law in the United States. Next primary manifestation is 7 last plagues. What's the next one after that?
The judgment at the end of the 1,000 years.
The end of the 1,000 years.
That's really the ultimate.
That is the perfect fulfillment.
That's
So he
really
has
what it all is
wrath, he's
talking about.
pacified. Wrath, he's pacified. He does that by the United States, he does that by each nation, and then on a larger scale.
His
he
wrath
does
is marking a waymark.
Okay.
Look at it that way.
Why is it marked that the king steps out in the garden and then he comes back and he basically, there's a period there before the king, he steps out because he's so angry. What do you think that means?
I don't know.
Is allowing Haman to manifest.
An illustration
Yeah.
of where he falls.
Yeah.
Haman falls by trying to force Esther into an unlawful relationship. Although you don't really read in there that he was actually trying to do that, right? He was in panic mode, but
He was just begging, yeah.
yeah, he was pleading for his life. He wasn't worried about.
Yeah.
So where are we? Let's get through chapter 8. Who was reading?
I think I just read. I think I finished.
I want
He
to
went
point
to verse
something
10
out.
or
Yeah, I went to 10.
Point something out. We got to go from 11 to 17, but point something out.
I looked up the word mules, and it's not connected at all with donkeys. I mean, it's completely differently used in the Bible. There's only 4 verses that uses that word, and there's only 4 verses that actually point out to the originator of that word. It's not connected.
And
But a
what
mule,
are they?
A
What
mule
are,
is a cross between a horse and a
A
donkey.
donkey.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
And if a horse and a donkey separately represent Islam, then a horse donkey represents Islam.
Would-
But
yeah.
you've got 3 representations of the triumphal entry. One of them's done on a mule, one of them's done on a horse, and one of them's done on an ass. But they all represent the same thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
and what do they have in common?
They're all horses.
They're all in the horse family, whatever the name of the horse family is. What's the name of the horse family?
Horse family?
There's a name, a Latin name for what?
Genius.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
Question for Google.
Sister Tanya.
Google it.
We know it. When you get it, you'll think, oh yeah, I've heard that before. Because I have. 11 through 17, I just don't remember it. Sister Tanya,
11 through 17?
of chapter 8.
Okay.
Equus equals.
Yeah.
Equine, yeah.
Yeah, equine.
Acorn.
Never heard that.
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have.
You just forgot.
I guess.
There's even a modern word they use about people that train horses and stuff that's...
Equestrian.
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 Oh, I've heard that one.
Riders.
Yeah.
That's the
Equestrian
riders.
riders.
Okay.
Wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey.
So when the Sunday law moves to the world, what happens?
And God's people are not going to die anymore.
Bloodbath.
When the Sunday law moves to the world,
Yeah.
what happens?
There's going to be a slaughter.
People are gonna
Yeah.
They're still going to die.
Yeah, people are gonna be
But they can.
It says Michael stands up.
No. Right here, this is at the Sunday law. There's a decree at the Sunday law that goes out to the 127 provinces that has the seal of God upon it. And now each country in the world is going to be tested by the Sunday law issue represented by Haman and the gallows. There's still people dying in this period. You're thinking, you're taking my question and putting it when Michael stands up. I'm saying at the Sunday law, when this goes out to the world, what happens? And this is something that you like to dwell on, and you're missing it.
You know about they take it into their own hands?
No, I'm not on
Slaughter.
about that. Read the first phrase of this verse 11 once again. They're gathered together.
Yeah.
There's a gathering taking place of who?
The Jews.
the Jews.
Of Edom, Moab, and Ammon that are going to escape the hand of the papacy. What does it mean that the Jews are being gathered?
They're all
Choosing.
Jews in a sense.
Okay, so they're being gathered, but what's it mean? What's the counterpart to that?
Scattering.
The other class is being scattered. What is being marked at the Sunday law? The 25-20, because the 25-20 both gathers and scatters depending on what place, how you relate to it. I mean, get it?
Yeah.
That's what you teach. Sister Tanya.
Upon one day in all the province of the king Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar.
What is that day?
That was the day when the death decree was going to go forth towards the Jew.
I mean, where are we getting that day from?
A few chapters back, or Haman.
What decree are we getting it from?
Which number
Second.
decree?
The third decree.
Yeah.
What are the decrees? What's the first decree?
It's the Vashti will no
Divorce.
longer come before
Divorce decree.
the king.
Okay, what's the second decree?
Calling of the virgin.
Calling of the virgins. What's the third decree?
It's the death. It's the Haman's Trump wants to kill the Jews at the Sunday law.
It's the Sunday law death decree, but we know the Sunday law process is bigger than just a singular event. And when was the third decree going to go into effect?
The 13th day of the 12th month.
So this is a decree that has a direct relationship to the third decree.
It's in the 13th day of the first month.
That's when it was sent out.
That was
When
when
it
it
was
was
sent
to be enforced on the 12th month, on the 13th
Oh, so
day
you got
of
a
that
whole
month.
year.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it had 11 months.
So I'm wanting you to see the relationship of the four decrees so far that we're dealing with the fourth decree. Which of the two of the four decrees have a direct relationship?
3 and 4.
3 and 4. So those decrees have been typified where?
41, 40.
Cyrus,
Okay.
Darius,
And
Artaxerxes, and what's Nehemiah's fourth decree? Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes. There's a connection between the third and fourth.
On verse 9, we are told when this decree was actually written out. It says that Mordecai, then the king's scribes called at the time of the 3rd month, and on the 23rd day of that month. So we're still dealing with the same year when the death decree was supposed to go in effect on the 12th month and the 13th day. It was written out on the first month, 13th day, going to go in effect in the 12th month, 13th day.
11 months later.
And then this one is actually about 2.5 months later. It was to reverse that, right?
Yeah, it really doesn't reverse it. It gives them opportunity to defend themselves. But yeah, but go ahead.
Okay, verse 13. The copy of the writing for a command to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad.
So what's Mordecai represent here?
Christ
Clothed in Christ's
Clothed to the high
righteousness and the
priest.
law.
And when
God's people.
does he take this position?
And
At the Sunday law. And back in verse 7, who's Esther and Mordecai?
it's a lawful combination.
It's back in
She's
Revelation.
the
when we
church.
read that.
She's the church.
And Mordecai.
Spirit and the
Yeah, that's Revelation.
So that would
The
be
Spirit and the bride say,
Spirit of
come.
Spirit of the
Joshua and Eliezer.
Joshua and Eliezer.
You see that represented?
And what is it?
It's the human and
Divine.
Divine.
This is an illustration of the incarnation. All right. Mordecai is, at least at one level, Mordecai is a symbol of the Holy Spirit in this story. And Esther's the symbol of the humanity of the church that are combined.
In verse 7.
In verse 7 and onward, but here as the loud cry of the third angel is going out to the entire world, Mordecai is a symbol of the power of the Holy Spirit, and he's clothed in the righteousness. This message is clothed in the righteousness and authority of Christ. Go ahead, sister.
Now, on 13 says, Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So when I said reversed, is that instead of them being killed, they are given authority for them to kill their enemies. Isn't that
Yeah, but
reversed?
if you're going to reverse something, you wouldn't even have to do that. You just say that
They
the
wouldn't be allowed-
decree
they
is
wouldn't be
null and
allowed to
void.
attack
you
anybody.
can't reverse it anyway because the law
Law
of
of
the
the Medes and the Persians.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, verse 14 or 15?
17.
16.
16. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city whatsoever the king's commandments and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them.
There's
So-
a feast marked.
Pardon me?
There's a feast marked.
There's a feast marked, but what happens in this period of time?
There's a gathering.
The
also.
conversion.
And many of the people of the land,
Become Jews. It's a great work of evangelism.
great work of evangelism,
The 11th
11th
hour
hour
workers?
workers coming in.
Yeah.
Why?
Because the message is going
Because of
forth,
the
flowing to
sin
Christ's
that came upon them.
righteousness.
Because the fear of what?
Of the
Jews.
Jews fell upon them.
Fear of the Lord.
The fear of the Lord. It's the beginning of wisdom.
And like
Starts
gladness
another
and much
three-step
joy,
process.
but none of the peace. That reminds me of that quote in the Spirit
Yeah,
of
when you-
prophecy. When
right.
they,
Right.
I mean, there is a type of light gladness and much joy that is correct, and then there's a type that isn't, that
Right.
preceded it.
Sunday will have here first.
Okay,
You overdo the second step.
we only have 8 minutes, so we will do chapters 9 and 10 tomorrow, Lord willing.
We can we
Oh, we got to illustrate it on the board in the last few moments of time. Okay. Okay, we're placing this story at 9/11. Why? The beginning of this story.
for one reason Shushan, because it's connected to Daniel 10.
Oh, no, we're not doing it for that. Daniel 10 was something that we recognized after the fact. If we hadn't recognized 9/11 first, we couldn't have made that connection. Why are we starting this story at 9/11? Have we forgotten that already?
It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Because of decrees,
Because of the decrees.
and virgins
Alright.
have been gathered.
Ezra had all
Feast.
the
Changing of the church.
The what?
Changing of the church.
Changing of the church. Okay, there's a church being passed by and a church being chosen. Where are the decrees given from?
Shushan.
From here. How many decrees are going to come from here?
3.
1, 2, 3. Now the fourth decree is going to come from here, but when is the fourth decree marked?
Right
Sunday.
down there.
It's marked down here. So where do we see the 3 decrees all together?
Ezra.
Ezra 7, 9. When he comes out of Babylon, all of them are right there.
And
And
they're implemented at different places.
yeah. So this is why we put it at 9/11. So at this point, the 3 decrees are here, and there's a feast of 180 days and 2 feasts of 7 days. Go ahead, Michael. This is your billywhack.
I'm just watching.
You want to get it recorded. We're rebuilding this. We placed the call to Esther right here. Esther had went through 120 days, or 12 months. 12 months. We marked 12 months. And this we dealt with as a fractal. Okay, we showed 12 months from here to here. And what happens at the end of the 12 months?
She's married.
A marriage. But we also see a marriage here. So at the fractal level, we can see 12 months here, if it's right to say fractal level, and there is a marriage here. What's the second witness to the marriage here?
Marriage of Cana.
The marriage at Cana. What's the marriage here, second witness? October 22nd, 1844. He enters into the marriage. Okay, in this 12 months, in that part of the story of Esther, how is the 12 months divided?
6 and 6.
6 months and 6 months. But we will also have 2 6-month periods in here at the fractal level. How many days in a month?
30.
30. So 6 times 30
180.
is 180. So we see that confirmed. Why are there 2 7-day feasts here?
Because there's a doubling.
The doubling. We're building this. We have 4 minutes. There's much stuff that we want to build on this visual for this presentation on the camera. Anyone that wants to participate, go ahead. I'm not pulling all these things into my mind.
Well, the decrees, yes, they're all there, but they have to be given in their order. So we see that the second decree, there's a calling for the virgins at 9/11.
Virgins gathered here.
But the first place that they're selected is at the midnight cry, where the marriage takes place.
Okay, the virgins are gathered here. They're selected here.
Yeah,
And then there's a second gathering
yeah.
of the virgins here if we're using the fractal level,
Yeah,
which is this 12 months.
yeah.
But if we're using the larger picture of this 12 months, there are virgins gathered here at 9/11, and then the virgins that go into the most holy place with Christ are gathered here.
There's the hiding of Esther.
The hiding of Esther.
She doesn't reveal herself. In
There's, yes, she doesn't reveal herself. There's a hiding, but there's something that we saw a couple days ago. Esther represents at one level the priest in this fractal.
Yeah.
Okay, from here to here, Esther represents the priests that are gathered in this 12 months for this marriage.
But then she represents the people that were not called in this thing.
Yes, but she wasn't called for this 30-day period here. In another line, she gets called in this history
The second gathering of the virgins.
under a 3-day fast. So here, who is she?
Levites.
She's the Levites. But who is she here?
Church
Church
triumphant.
Church triumphant, but just to keep one of the lines of thought going here, she's the church of the first fruits. So Esther's representing this period, and this period. Who is Vashti?
She's church militant. And
She's explained that to us. The church militant.
yeah, she's the church. Well, she's the church that refuses the king's invitation.
Yeah, she's not the church militant. Who is she?
She's the one,
She's the unwise. She's
unwise
the,
virgin.
Foolish
the
virgin.
foolish virgin.
Foolish.
She in the Millerite history. Who is she?
She was
Protestant.
The Protestants that refuse to come to the call. In our history, who is she?
Foolish virgin.
The hypocrites.
The foolish virgins, the hypocrites. She's the church. She's the covenant church. She'd been married to the king, and she's getting passed by. So in the people that were getting passed by in the Millerite history were the Protestants. The people that are getting passed by in our history are Seventh-day Adventists. Okay,
The incarnation.
the incarnation. Okay, so you're going to see the incarnation here with Mordecai and Esther being given the house of Haman as the church triumphant is lifted up. The incarnation is illustrated here.
You see the triumphal entry of Mordecai down here.
The triumphal entry of Mordecai in this history is the incarnation.
There's an incarnation. It's a midnight cry based on the line of Elizabeth and Mary, right?
Yeah, based upon the line of Elizabeth and Mary, you have the incarnation here.
That's the
Would-
marriage.
Would Purim be an example of?
Purim is tomorrow, right?
Is that tomorrow?
Is it?
Yeah, chapters 9 and 10 is where we're going to learn about Purim.
Oh, well, we've read it before.
Yeah, well, it's based also upon Haman casting lots, right?
But when the Spirit and the bride say come, is that a symbol of humanity and divinity at one level?
Yeah, that's what we're saying. We're saying that Mordecai and Esther here at the Sunday Law, where we just read, is a symbol of the bride and the Spirit in this history telling Edom, Moab, and Ammon to come to the wedding.
Is there any significance that on the second day of the banquet, Esther does request two requests to the king? One towards Haman and one towards the degree that Haman had made?
Double requests? And you're saying that's here? That's here.
Yeah.
There's definitely significance. Okay, so there's probably more to put into this, but we're 2 minutes over. So, Brother Jim, you want to have a closing prayer?
Dear God in heaven, thank you for this day of life. Thank you for holding the four winds back. Thank you for opening up these truths to us. We pray that you will continue to send us the Holy Spirit. You will protect us from harm and evil and sin as we go forward with this day. We pray all this to you in Jesus' name.
Amen.